Hello, welcome. We are Human Design Book Club. And today we are talking about Human Design by Jenna Zoe, Part 2, pages 132 to 283. We are your hosts. Jennifer Cordes is our sacral generator. She's 3-5, quad right, mountains, and cross of service. We have Kayla Seda, emotional manifester, 1-3, Shores, also cross of service, and myself, Rebecca Anderson, splenic projector, 2-4, quad right, mountains, cross of Maya. We envision a world where everyone can live their truth, everyone can make decisions easily, people are safe to tell their story, people get to have fun together, community supports us while giving us the freedom to explore our individual paths. A little bit from this book. Being your inherent skills and traits is your real job. Success is doubling down on the stuff that you already knew how to do, but perhaps never valued or saw as your keys. Success comes to us most easily when we are flexing our innate traits and contributing them to the whole and allowing everyone to do theirs. When you trust them and share them with others, they will look like pure wonder. Just reading this again, this part and the whole book just gives you the good feels, right? That's how I felt reading it. And this part of the book that we're talking about today is what she calls the gifts, which is what in human design we call the gates. And she just goes right through them, 1 through 64, and just talks about them all equally as if you have that, you have that. And so what were some of your all's impressions of this section as we begin to dive in?
I thought it was interesting. My training had a very strong planetary focus, and I thought it was very interesting to treat every gate, whether it's the node or the Jupiter or a Venus, it just didn't matter. They were all the same, conscious, unconscious. I thought that was an interesting approach.
Yeah, I thought they were nice descriptions that felt good. Going from 1 to just 64, I feel like it didn't really show as much about how the circuitry shows the big picture of stuff, and I'm kind of like a circuitry nerd, so that was a little bit hard for me. But overall, like they were nice descriptions of them. It just they're all so connected, but I feel like I didn't get that depth of connection of how the channels work and then the circuitry works and all of that. So I was like kind of I liked parts and I didn't like parts of it.
Oh, awesome. Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. I love it when people don't like things about a book. Then we get to dig into the juiciness, right? But that's a good point. It was almost as if that part was left out. And I myself love the centers, which we're going to talk about them in light of the centers. And that's another element that she didn't discuss. Now, Jen, would you like to tell us about how these next few sections are going to go?
So when, we had kind of talked about how we were going to do book club, which was essentially, we can't cover every gate. This is not supposed to be a teaching opportunity. Buy the book, read it, go through your thing. The 1 to 64 thing, I kind of liked in a sense of if somebody was just figuring out human design and there's an overwhelming amount of information, you could say, oh, I have gate 13, flip, find gate 13. Because to you, you may not even know what a G center is or where it is. Like I remembered when I first had my chart, I had to write down what's the G and what's the spleen. They were just geometric shapes. So when I was thinking about which gates we might like to call out, like it can be sort of typical to pick Sun or Earth or your Venus, but I thought Venus might be the coolest one because I'm like, this is what's important to us. And I thought, how interesting to say I did conscious. Is this the most important thing to you? And if it is your value, how does it feel to talk about it in the framework that she gave? Because when I looked at mine, like it's in a very advanced analysis, but in color analysis, my gate for ajna to throat, it's always on. No matter what, it's just wired into me all the time. And I thought, reading hers was actually a helpful way to kind of look at the mental pressure that I can be under all the time. So, because especially when she talked about emotions versus logic, and that when you justify a negative feeling, it cements it as reality. And I thought, I do that a lot because I am so busy trying to marshal the details for the opinion to make sure it's expressed in the right way. And can this hold up? And it happened 30 times, so it's probably going to happen over and over. I have just really turned that quote logical brilliance against myself. And I was very interested to hear what your Venuses felt like for both of you, because I'm thinking I do struggle with this and it's always on and I'm always dealing with it. I really liked her ways of what was it? She said flex this gift and then basically how to ameliorate the negative impact of it. It just, when I came across this, I thought, yeah, that rang very true to me.
Yeah. And we have on the slide here for those just listening, we have slides if you want to watch on the YouTube or check out the PDF. But you described the way that she talked about gate 4, gift 4, fun to deconstruct, distill things down and spot truths, stamina, mind doesn't tire out,
Yeah,
restless in the search for truth,
yeah,
patience, waiting for the discovery process, willingness to make sense of things, don't use logic for everything, can bolster insecurity, making sense isn't making truth,
yeah.
recognize emotions versus logic, as you were saying, look for neutral and detached to flex this gift, not charged, triggered, or insecure. Justifying a negative feeling cements it as reality. Detach and think of a different way to see or feel it. Create a new template for your behavior going forward.
And that part I loved, especially because the whole point of that is like, that's kind of the beginning of the scientific process is what's going on. And I'm thinking, do I want to make a template going forward from all the crap I hate and that has felt terrible or has gone wrong? Or do you want to make a template going forward, especially as a quote, what is it for her? Adventurer, a third line martyr. Do I want to make a template from all the ways that it's gone wrong and that I know I don't like? Or do I want to say, okay, I've discovered those 30 things. What's possible when we take those out of the mix? And maybe 2 of those work and 28 don't, or something changes, but the foundation is no longer, I don't want this and I don't want this and I don't want this. It opens things up to a completely different way of thinking. I've studied this for so long and I've gone through her trainings, her reader trainings, and she's lovely. And this is the first time I thought, "Oh, I know what to do with this now."
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love reading something that you might think is basic and still getting nuggets out of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This one felt more like a shovelful. It didn't feel like a nugget to me. I mean,
Mm.
other times it's a nugget, but with this one at least, because something, and it's just such a strong part of my design, and I struggle with it because that's where anxiety, that's one of the roots of anxiety. It's like it never turns off. So how do you want to use it?
Mhm. All right, so we have Kayla's Venus, 25, embracing life with childlike innocence. I'll read through these. Young in your energy, freshness, and zest for life. Your lightness brings others back to life. Child's mind, life is a joy and gift, and being in your power. Keep your heart open, say how you feel and what you want in a light and kind way. Don't play it cool. Serious does not equal successful. Be in joy while making your dreams come true.
Yeah, I really liked this, and I think it felt fit well with Venus because Venus is all about like your values and kind of like I've heard it described as the standard, how things are done for you, your marching orders, and I do really resonate with that. Keep your heart open to speak in a kind way, even if you're not saying like even if it's like constructive or things like that. That kindness is important to me, and I struggle with people who can't give me that kindness back. And so I thought this was a really beautiful way to describe that. Serious does not equal successful. I do have a playful energy, but I also can be a bit serious too, because I have the channel of struggle and judgment. So there's like those aspects within my chart that are more serious, but and then we've also heard of 25, it's kind of like that safe landing place from the shock of outside forces and things like that. And so I, yeah, I liked the way she described this one. I thought it was a nice way to talk about it, and that lightness and innocence just being an important thing for me, for myself, and also for those people around me as well. So I feel like your values, it's kind of like if people can't meet you at your values, it's harder to have a relationship or a
Mm.
friendship.
It's really good. And I
And
love that line, don't play it cool. I feel like she used that a couple times throughout in a few different of the gifts. And it's just a really helpful reminder that there's this societal conditioning at some point to just take, be serious, but that's not in most cases your true self. The true self
Yeah,
is like feeling feelings and having fun and expressing
very
ourselves in some,
playful.
yeah, wild ways. So
Yeah.
I just loved that reminder as well.
I liked the playful lightness that she described it as. I'm a homeschool mom, and I was thinking ahead to when my child starts learning cursive, that I would love to take a handwriting class, like
Mm.
calligraphy. And I'm like, that totally is that energy. And it's like, I like want you to love this show, like watch me love how much I'm learning to write beautifully and what it means to me and to inspire through that way too. And I was like, that's a good description of it.
And when you're ready, we can talk because I'm actually a handwriting analyst. So
Yes,
some of the old ways can be very traditional. So it's inculcation to say, and we always do it this way. It's almost like from homogenization. So there
mhm,
might be certain traits that, as you know your children, of course, and you know their design, like what if there's more individuality that could be like, you know what, we're quote taught to make a D this way, but maybe make it this way. You might feel a little more free. Because I wonder sometimes when kids can way back when they can struggle with penmanship or writing, it's not so much that the writing is the problem, it's you're putting them in a straitjacket and it's not who they really are.
yeah, I like that.
I also wonder with you too, this felt kind of like Gate 58 to me as well. Like the
Yeah,
innocence part's a little
Joyous.
bit different, but the vitality and the joy, and I always think innocence can be read as naive, but it reminds me more of like a sixth line feeling and that
yeah,
essence of it's Buddha. You're seeing it as open, you're seeing it as new. It doesn't mean that you're stupid or you got your head in the sand, but there's so many
yeah,
ways to look at things.
yeah, I agree.
My Venus is 42, realizing potential, which is also my personality sun. Here to make sure growth happens with maximum potential. Positive, abundant outlook. Create success for you and others. See blockages clearly. Get quiet and observe to strengthen this gift. Not just for personal gain, focusing solely on you, short circuits. Use your skills to help others' potential too, but in balance. Laser focus on your skills, not jack of all trades that dilutes. Endings are an illusion. This one was really fascinating, and especially just reading this summary, there's so many keynotes that go with other parts of my design, such as being a projector with the success and focusing on a system, which is something I look forward to in the future. Some of the highlights that I picked out from this one, a few other quotes, which are pretty much what is summarized here, but it says, it's easy for you to have positive, abundant outlooks, and this lends itself to you creating success for yourself and others. That just all comes together when she says it's easy. It's like, wow, yes. And I accept that, I receive that as a way of aligning to my true self. And it's my value, right? Interesting. She also said, you're very good at overcoming blockages and helping others see their blockages because your mind sees them so clearly. Exactly in the summary here, which is fascinating that these are the exact quotes that I also picked out. And I do just love this gift, this gate, but it's about growth. It's about And that's, back to the original keynote, increase of life and the cycles of life. So, anyone else had any thoughts on this?
I wondered about the positive abundant outlook. This is beyond the scope of her book, but for some views, which would be the bottom right arrow with the four arrows at the top of the chart, the bottom right one, for some that might feel like it's in conflict. Like, let's
Mm,
say if someone had a like a guilt view, or you're always look like me, I'm always looking at power. It may be sometimes kind of hard to feel positive and abundant in that outlook because I'm seeing where the system isn't supporting people the way that it should. So I always think, like, again, this was meant to be a broad stroke, high view book that could kind of like be how you get your toe in the pool. That's how I read it. But I always think if something isn't resonating, is so complex and so layered that there could be like a really strong component of you that maybe has a twist that this would be that would modify it.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
And
I
also,
thought it was,
like with other gates, like 18,
Mm-hmm.
always looking for improvement.
Yeah.
yeah, I thought this had really good projector vibes for you. I thought
Yeah.
it was a nice one. Yeah.
Or getting quiet and observe could feel really easy for you, or easier, just because of the prodigal, right? Like with the 33, whereas for someone else who maybe has a tremendous amount of impatience in the chart and wants to go, 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 and they have a lot of motors and they're up into the throat, that part might be harder. Whereas for you, it's like, well, of course I'm in a phase of retreat. Isn't everybody? So I think it's just a reminder. When I read this, I thought, man, she nailed you. Like, it's how it feels. Yeah.
Yes, that's fun. And these are just, again, examples of how in the book it's very feel good,
Mm.
very aligning. So if you're just looking for a book to feel good, could be that one, especially this part of it. And so now we have each of the gates broken down by the sinners, and we have it described with the different I Ching, Rave I Ching, and then the Jenna Zoe book.
The part that I liked about this was, Ra was always very clear that he wrote the rave I Ching for the not self. So, and there are times, of course, that can resonate with us because so many people are struggling, and that's the point. They aren't being their true self. So even if like 61 never felt that out of balance to me, with like the actual I Ching, the original book of changes is inner truth. The rave I Ching calls it mystery, and Jenna would call it inner knowing. That feels pretty much the same. But if you kind of think about like with gate 63, the I Ching calls it after completion. The Rave I Ching, Ra's version, calls it doubt, and Jenna calls it exploring the unknown. This could be almost like another way of looking at the gates, kind of like what Gene Key does with the 3 levels of exploration. I always think it's another way of saying, like, you can always get at the lowest vibration, but just because the Rave I Ching, he notes it that way, like it was written for the not self. Like he always said, the only one that can write the true self version is you, and that's for your chart. He can't hand that to you. That has to come from within. And I like the idea of the original book of changes and then kind of saying what's a more elevated, positive way, the way Jenna does it. Just because you get a reading and it's
Yeah.
keynoted negatively doesn't mean you stay that way.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be fun to talk about 61 for
Mm.
the head center because we all have that. And it's something that is one of my favorite gates that I have because I absolutely love mystery and occult knowledge and conspiracies and things like that. But one of the quotes from the way she had described it is when you feel something true, you know it in your bones. And I really love that. And I thought it fit well with just individuality in general because that's just a knowing. It's like you just don't know and then you know. And so I thought that was a really nice way to put it. What did you guys think about how she described 61? If you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I had highlighted one of the quotes. She said, "Don't blindly subscribe to a system that claims to have all the answers, whether that's a religion, a spiritual system, or a science. This is wrong because your knowing is meant to constantly renew and evolve as your mind expands." So as we were just saying, like all these three I do identify with: inner truth, mystery, inner knowing. They all kind of go together with a theme. But it's like we know, but then we're still searching, and then we know again, and we know more, and we're still searching. And it's always gonna, keep driving us toward more seeking. And just knowing that there's no final conclusion, that in and of itself provides so much relief and joy in the process for me.
Hmm.
And you can find, I remember when we were doing the white book, when he talked about like that, what is that, that potential of that inner truth is silence, right? It's almost like the void and then the truth kind of drops into it. Or I always think of it like a lake and the pebble drops in. But I always think there's a big part of it is when you're not judging that mystery or that truth and you're just letting it come to you how it comes, I think we have a greater chance for the realizing, just because we haven't added more pressure to the mix. And we're more open to what's going on within us and around us. Whereas if we're so busy, I've got to have the aha, I've got to have the aha, and that's all we're chasing, we're missing so much. We put blinders on. We just can feel justified in it because we think we have blinders on for the truth, but there's more than one truth. Mm.
Absolutely. So we had those three in the head. Now we have the ajna: 47, 24, 4, 17, 43, 11. We talked about 4 a little bit already. Any of these other ones stood out to you from the book?
I read 17 as one of the main ones because it's my son, and we all have that one as well too. And she really described it as the scientist's mind, and you could block that gift of the scientific mind by needing to see the truth as a final destination. And I thought that was really nice too, because there can always be improvements, and once you think you know, you probably don't know. So
Mm.
I thought that was really fitting as well too. I liked that.
It goes along with the kind of the theme of this 61 we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I like 24 made me think of you because that's a natural part of your definition. I had it under a transit, but I think quiet breakthroughs is such a lovelier
Mm.
way to look at it than having to quote rationalize something. Because
Yeah,
rationalizing brings in a judgment, whereas if it's just this breakthrough, it's like, oh, it came and now I have it. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, that's true. Out of those, I would say on the 24, the rationalizing word itself doesn't have as much of a like positive connotation.
Mhm.
I love that. And I had actually highlighted 11 randomly. It is part of my definition, but when I was going through it, I just noticed things about it that I hadn't thought about before. The way she said it here, I have the quote: each 11 is a person who is constantly being flooded with new ideas, whether that be for products, services, or creations. You are given this gift to be a receiver of concepts and ideas from source, not just for yourself, but for others too. You can make a career out of this alone because the world is so in need of new, better products and services that will help create more beautiful, happy, well-functioning world. I was just like, whoa, that would be so cool. Okay,
Huh.
I'll call that in. I'll just give you all my ideas. That'd be great. Yes, yes, that can happen. But I've noticed throughout my life, there has to be kind of right place, right people for the ideas to come. Because there's been certain periods where ideas are shut down, and I can look back and think, wrong place, wrong people for the sharing of this gift. So that was kind of a cool description. The throat. I know I have a few in 62 and 33, but want to keep it succinct, I think. What did you guys pick out from the throat center, which is one of the more complex of them? Is there another? Yeah, it goes on to the next two as well. So
Yeah, so the one that stood out to me was 8 because I just kind of went through the ones that I had, of course, but the tastemaker and the marketer, I kind of liked that. Traditionally it's more about direction, I would say, but I liked the eye for style and beauty in people who know what they like and can help spotting and recognizing it through your eyes. I liked how she described it as, the you could block your gift by needing to fit in and follow the norm. And I was like, yeah, I like that. It's like your own individual direction. You've got to trust what you like and your own taste in life.
Yeah, that one made me think of you. I don't know so much about Happy Go Lucky or Gate 20, but
Oh, interesting.
I don't assume that everyone with Gate 20 is tripping through the daisies.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that gift in that way, but the now, I could kind of see it as like a spin. I mean, from if you're in the now, you could be having a happy-go-lucky time, right?
Yeah.
But maybe not also.
But depending even like on, especially coming from the spleen and the fears there and how confident you are, worried about the past and the failure, if you're trusting the present moment, like there are so many things where that really may not feel like somebody's experience depending on what's going on, especially in the spleen.
One of the things I liked about the gift 33 is, and she calls it going within, this quote, a happy life for a person deep in this gift is a healthy balance of time spent discovering within and time spent getting out of themselves and sharing that newfound wisdom with others. So I could totally see that. And that aligns with the 2 line in my profile as well. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so when I 56 and 35, like a big part of 56 is she used to call it, what is it, stimulating storyteller or something like that. A few of these she changed from her original reader trainings. But the idea of feeding the spirit, that's kind of different than the way Ra would talk about it, which is essentially you just require a lot of stimulation. It's one thing to say you need a little bit more. It's another to say because it's nurturing you. But I also think a lot of the way 56 is talked about is similar to the way she's talking about gate 35, which is, you collected this wisdom or these ideas and it's being expressed in a way that other people can take in. That's kind of different than whether it's on the emotional wave or not.
Mm.
Because I know 35 sharing your experiences, but a lot of what that feels like to me is you're moving through a crisis or you're helping somebody come through a crisis to get to progress so that there can be change. When I think about experiences I share, I always feel like a 56 talking more than I do a 35. Different parts of my throat feel a little different to me depending, and I sound different too, because I know whenever I am talking about from a 35, usually my eyes will start to water.
Mm.
Mm.
Or my nose will run, like water moves in the body, emotion is being stirred, memory is being stirred. That's very different to me than when 56 is talking, and 56 can a lot of times be experiences more than feeling. So that's why, like, everybody's got an opinion, but that doesn't feel quite the same to me as someone who has both of those gates.
Mhm. They are both in the abstract circuitry, so she
Mm.
could have been taking, back to circuitry, could have been taking a little bit of, there's a theme, shared theme due to that circuitry and putting it in both. So that is kind of an interesting connection of them. G center, 7, 1, 13, 25, 46, 2, 15, 10. I don't know that I highlighted specifically any from here. My one gate that I have defined, the 46, I did love her description of it, and she calls it embodiment. But I think to me it was similar to my experience of like love of the body and synchronistic experiences. So what did you guys think?
Yeah, I had mainly just read the 25, which we already talked about, but I like the description of 15 exploring the edges. That's kind of a cool way to
Mhm.
talk about extremes. That feels like a good way to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we can think like, oh, that means you're an extreme person, but the whole point of it is that's where the modesty comes from, is to find balance that the collective can thrive in. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't mean you have to stay over here or you have to stay over here. It's like, what's the middle ground that can help to harmonize people. But I do like that. It's an exploration. It doesn't mean that you're an outcast and you stay there. Maybe you do, but it's not inside of it. The one that, and it could just be because it's also where my Jupiter is, being in love with life is gate 10. Gate 10 does feel very much about behavior to me, more than just like, it is a love gate. It's almost kind of like a personal and transpersonal. It does double duty, but that does, and it just could be that my loss it's there. But when I listen to that one, I'm thinking, that doesn't feel quite so much about loving life. I always think of that more as the vitality of 58, but that could just be me.
And we have the 4 heart ego gates, 26, 51, 21, 40.
It is a kinder way to talk about the egoist. When we think about
They were
surrender,
all a lot. They
yeah,
were all a lot
much kinder
nicer.
about,
51 too.
yeah,
That 51
shaker
gives
upper,
a
yeah,
hard time sometimes, but her description was a lot nicer. Shaker upper.
yeah,
These ones for sure are all much kinder
yes.
than the other ones.
I
I
really like
thought,
40 as the giver.
yeah, I read that one as well. The Giver, designed to work hard and share the rewards. I thought that was
Yeah,
a nice description.
yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. Solar plexus, 36, 22, 37, 6, 49, 55, 30. These were all beautiful. Not having any defined, um, it's interesting because when you don't have it defined, it's like not as interesting. Have you guys found that? But I'll look for others in my life who have it, and or just ones like 55, abundance, spirits, exuberance. That one's just a fun one to contemplate anyway, because it's part of all of our collective future. Which
Yeah.
ones stood out to you?
Well, just what you had just said, that was interesting too. When I read this book, I wasn't as interested in the other ones as well. Though I feel like with the Rave I Ching, when it's a little bit more spicier description, I liked reading other people's more because
Mm.
it gets more like in like really things to pick out versus this is so like an overall pretty description of it. It's so general, but the Rave I Ching, it is a little bit harder to read. It has words that are meant to trigger you more. So reading other people's is more fun. I thought that was kind of an interesting way as well, because I had that experience as well. But
Yeah.
for this one, I really dived into 37, the family, friendship, and fostering togetherness. And I really liked that as well. It's like together, family and together time is everything for you. And that just was totally true for me. So I liked that.
And I always wondered, well, I have wondered in like the fear that can sit there is a fear of, which one is that, intimacy? Or I forget if that was 37 or 6, but in essence, it's not just about friendship or the
Yeah.
bond, basically. And I always found it interesting that when you kind of look at I Ching, it's the family. She talks about it as fostering togetherness, which makes more sense because that's your tribe. But I never think of that as just friendship.
Mm,
I do tend to think of that as community.
yeah, I do too.
Sacral, other of the more complex gates with all of these different ones, or centers with all these different gates. Jen, did you like the 34?
Yeah, I'm so used to it being called power that I always think coming alive, like, okay, like that's my Neptune. So I never feel like I have a really good grasp of that one. It's something that just kind of happens and it does what it does. But I could see very much as that I carry 3 of the gates for integration, that it really is in essence, it does feel like something when the sacral turns on, it just does feel like all of a sudden, there it is. And not that it was dead before, but it can feel
Mm.
inert at times. And then all of a sudden there's just, it's complete animation. And I feel like I turn into a different person. I'm just ready to go. Whereas 2 minutes before I was ready for a nap. Something just flips.
I don't think that I have anything to add to this section. What about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, we already talked about my 42, but I did actually really love her description of 14. Um, calling it expanding what's good in others. Whereas in
Yeah.
Ravi Ching, it's called power skills, I Ching, possession and great measure. With this being a gate that I have in an undefined center, sometimes it is still hard for me to grasp it and see it and really get the meaning of it. But her descriptions were really helpful when like you're really looking at it in the context of others. And one of the quotes, she just opens it with, those with gift 14 are adept at helping other people thrive and at creating prosperity for them. And doing this is also the surest route for creating abundance in their own lives.
Hmm.
Love that so much. I feel like that's a huge thing that I want to just take with me. Maybe write it out for like an affirmation each day, as far as like, this might be my next year's theme thing. I love it.
Yeah, I like that. That really fits with the idea of the Pinta as well too, because the 14 is really bringing power to your Pinta. And if your Pinta is successful, other people not only can learn from you, but you're maybe creating jobs and things like that. So kind of fits with that as well.
Mhm.
Ooh, good insight.
Yeah.
And the splenic center. We have 48, 57, 44, 50, 32, 28, 18. So many good ones here. I'm not sure where to start.
Mhm.
I'll start with 28 because she had said that gift 28 often have an overwhelming feel of fear of running out of time or being behind. Like, I
Hmm.
definitely experienced that a lot. Um, and how to flex, figure out what living a full life means to you. I thought that was kind of nice.
It is.
Yeah, 48 was pretty synchronous between the I Ching, the Ravi Ching, and then hers, the well depth, and then a well of wisdom. The only thing I would caveat that is it depends on what you filled it up with.
Ooh,
If
good
you fill
point.
it up with but now, like, that's all you're gonna get out. So I always think
Yeah.
gate 48 reminds me very much as being correlated with, is the mind a right or a left arrow? Because it's like, you may not have control over what comes out of you. It really depends on whether someone is pulling it out. So on one hand, I think, but if I spend most of my time putting in things that are low vibration or that don't serve or that don't even interest me because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a quote good generator, I'm not gonna like who I am when it comes out. So there may be no wisdom in that because it wasn't authentic. So I always think it's not just wisdom, it's the integrity with which you filled your cup. And then whether you like the taste of the water as it comes out and who you're sharing it with.
Yeah. It's important. I would just say on gate 32, I just love the name that she gave it.
Mm.
Whereas I Ching calls it duration, Ravi Ching continuity, Jenna Zoe says having a nose for success. There's a theme here.
Well, because it's so
Mm.
different than fear of failure. Like
Yeah.
it's a way to take, you could look at the light side or the dark side.
Hmm. And the root center, 58, 38, 54, 53, 60, 52, 19, 39, 41. What y'all love about these ones?
I like
I
52.
I like the name of 53, the starter upper.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I was gonna see what you guys thought about 41. I don't know if everybody read that one or not, but that one, I was trying to figure out where she got some of it from. It said 41 seeing future possibilities. And it says that they have a special skill of seeing future possibilities. When something arises, they can effortlessly see all the potential scenarios in about 2 split seconds. I don't understand where that comes from for 41 because 41 is like the fuel for a new emotional experience. And I guess that one went over my head of where that description came from. It says they can see all things that can happen. And so I guess in some aspect I could see to where it's like a fuel for a new experience. So during the emotional wave, they're seeing all these possibilities of a new experience. But that's just not how I guess I've always heard about 41. So what do you guys think? Where did that come from? Any ideas?
I love that question because I read that too, and this is one of my defined gates. But I resonate with that so strongly. Like I could, especially if it's something that's brought to me, I'm like, wow, we could do this, 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 and this. I could just immediately see all these possibilities of ways to do a thing. But in the context of this gate, that is a really good question. I think it does have to do with like there's a fantasy to this gate that
Yeah.
it's imagining possibilities in they would call it in the fantasy world that you could put kind of reinterpret fantasy into seeing possibilities with all these ways of solving a problem. That's how I put it together.
Okay. I could see that. I could accept that.
What do you
Because
think, Jen?
I went there and then I layered on top of it, and it could be I learned it from her or it was in analyst training and I don't remember which, but that gate was very much about like to kind of look at the contraction as you're pulling back and there's the tension of holding the arrow back while it's on the bow. And it's about where do I aim it? And that's that fuel and all that energy that's going to be launched. So when I think of that, because you're right, at first read, it's kind of like, I'm not sure about that. When you think
Yeah.
about the daydreamer who's gone through all of those things and isn't lost in it, and then knows how to hold the tension to know exactly where that tremendous fuel can be released, I think that's a bigger part of it. It's not just I can see these options, but it's marshaling the energy to know where it goes.
Yeah. I just wonder if it's that fast, you know, you
Yeah,
can know in 2 seconds. I imagine it being a really slow
yeah.
process of like having all these fantasies and ideas at once. And I'd heard this one described, I think from a Locke book, about it's like you don't really know what you want, but then it's like if you're in a car and your gas light comes on and you're like miles from the gas station, all you can think about is like the gas station. And that's how that clicked for me that that's what this is. It's like you were set on this, you need gas, like your car is almost empty and this is the plan. Like, I don't know. So that was one that I was like, oh, I don't know. But the way you guys described it, I can see the big picture of how she could there too.
Well, I would think of it as because it is fueling, like you said, an emotional process. It is an
Yeah.
individual. It's not dropped in immediately. It's not splenic. Like it's got to go through its process. So I always think it's when you're giving yourself time to daydream or fantasize, not to necessarily get lost in it or hide from reality, but just to explore all these other options. Then I think there's a better sense so that when you do get locked into, oh, I need gas, you've at least kind of gone through all the other ways that it could have been. I know this is the road I need to be on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you picked that out because it is one of those ones that is different than
Mhm.
the way other people describe, the way Ra would describe, very much.
39 is kind, rousing spirit.
Yeah, it is.
Not the provocateur or the
No,
obstruction.
I mean, it is a kind way, or even sensing people's needs is very different than just saying wanting, right? It's just
Hmm.
that sense of you know how to take care of people in a different way. Like I really like her language.
Yeah, so in conclusion of the book, both this part of it and just overall, I would say it was a fun read to a feel good read. And in that way, I enjoyed it. I would say it's not necessarily one that you're trying to learn from because there's so many kind of pieces of it that are interpretations. And what would you all say in conclusion?
I agree 100% with you. I think it was a fun read, and I liked the way we approached looking at the gifts, how different people have described them. But yeah, I mean, it's a good starter book, but if I mean, you've got to know all the details about the sinners and stuff too to really get a depth of what it's all about. So it was a fun read. I'm glad we did it.
It flirts. To me, it's flirting. You're seeing if you like it. I smile. Did they smile? Do we lean closer? Do we lean farther away? Like I think it's a really great. I began with her, and I think it's a beautiful way to begin to experience the human design system. Oh.
Great. Well, if anyone has any comments that they would love to share with us about their thoughts on the book, we'd love to hear you. And we'll be back next time.